A heroic chopper offers a lift for those in need of rescuing. This is Sega Masters. We're finally wrapping up the Master System's debut month in the United States, and while the console's first wave of North American releases consisted mostly of titles brought over from Japan and localized for the Western market, today we're actually looking at a cartridge produced specifically for the console's US launch lineup, Choplifter. Indeed a name that was familiar among American gamers at the time, which also marks the first Western exclusive release for Sega's 8-bit console, as Choplifter would eventually appear in Europe, yet never get released in Japan. Now, most longtime gamers may remember Choplifter as a hit computer title from 1982 that was created by Dan Gorlin and originally released by Broderbund software on the Apple II before making its way to other platforms. This is the Atari 8-bit version we're seeing here. It was centered around the all-American premise of bravely flying a chopper into hostile territory to rescue the captives being held there, and featured simple arcade-style action that was still fun and addictive. Choplifter coincidentally appeared when the nation was still in the wake of the Iran hostage crisis of the early 1980s, which also probably contributed to its surprise success since gamers could simulate rescuing the hostages themselves. While the Master System cartridge we're looking at does share the same name and premise as the computer game, it's not actually based on it. Instead, this card is actually a home conversion of an arcade game that was inspired by the computer original. Sega eventually purchased the rights to make an arcade version of Choplifter, which appeared in Japan and the US sometime in late 1985. The coin-up kept the core gameplay of the original computer game intact, but also expanded it from a single-stage experience into something more substantial, with different settings, new hazards, and so forth, and it did moderately well in the gaming halls. The following year, Sega, perhaps thinking the name still had some weight among American gamers and might generate a few console sales, ported Choplifter to the Master System as part of its North American launch lineup. Despite a few omissions, this home version is very close to the arcade game for the most part, and carries on the engaging gameplay from the computer original that's simple to understand, yet requires some strategic planning on the fly to truly succeed. You take off from your home base in your Hogsy chopper and scour the battlefield in search of the barracks holding the captives, while avoiding the various artillery out to shoot you down. Once you find each barrack and blast it open to release the hostages it contains, you then need to land and pick up as many as you can, then airlift them back to the safety of your base. Of course, it's not quite that simple. You'll be under fire from the enemy ground forces within seconds of landing, so you have to quickly decide how long you can stay on the ground picking up captives before taking to the air to deal with the tanks, jeeps, and whatever else, all while being targeted by the air forces. Not to mention the liberated hostages are vulnerable and defenseless out in the open and can be slain by enemy gunfire, or by your own carelessness. Should you successfully dodge the artillery again and make it back to your base, you drop off your precious cargo and rack up the bonus points before flying back into the fray looking to pick up more hostages. Multiple forays into the war zone are necessary, since the cart requires 40 of the 64 total hostages in each war zone to be rescued to advance to the next stage, and the Hogsy can only hold up to 16 passengers at a time. Handling the chopper can feel somewhat awkward at first due to some wicked inertia, yet the simple responsive controls are easy to get down with a little practice. Hence they get away with the arcade version's fuel meter, giving you one less thing to worry about. Unfortunately, all it takes is just one hit to bring the Hogsy down in a fiery crash, and the hostages on board will sadly perish as well. Once 40 hostages are safely at your base, you're whisked off to the next stage to continue your rescue mission. This time at sea, as you're now rescuing captives from aircraft carriers and submarines that surface from time to time. Good thing your chopper can float on the water and that the hostages can swim. Despite the cart's age, Choplifter's colorful locales are mostly well done, with some nicely designed and detailed landscapes along with some impressive parallax scrolling for the backgrounds. The various sprites sport some good details and animation for the most part, and the way the captives beg for you to come back should you leave them behind is a nice touch as well. The background tunes are nothing special but still contribute to the action pretty well, while the sound effects are just there as usual. While Choplifter's hectic gameplay is fun and addicting and never gets dull, being a part of a 1980s arcade game means it also mimics the quarter-munching difficulty level of its coin-op parent, which can seem downright relentless at times with the sheer amount of hostile foes and bullets coming after you. Your flight skills will certainly be put to the test as you work to avoid that one misstep that dooms your chopper and your passengers to an unfortunate fate. The third level, which takes place in a volcanic cave, can really push your limits since you must operate in claustrophobic conditions, trying to rescue the captives and dodging all the bullets flying at you while also hoping not to accidentally fly too high and collide with the ceiling. Even with the brutal difficulty, the stages can be mastered with enough practice and perseverance. It is fortunate how you can afford to lose a few hostages and still be able to advance. Though should you suffer 25 casualties, the game automatically ends regardless of how many lives you have remaining, since meeting your quota would become impossible. But as is the case with many early arcade conversions in the Master System, the elevated difficulty level can often feel like it was designed to compensate for the lack of content in this cart. Should you pass the cave level, you'll find the 4 setting from the arcade version, which was set in a futuristic city, was left out of this home port. Instead, palette swap versions of the first 3 stages round this card out, and they work in nearly identical fashion, save for a few new obstacles and hazards thrown in to increase the challenge. Even if you endure through all 6 levels, your reward is a brief credit screen before the action starts all over again. So once again, it won't be long before you've seen everything this card has to offer, leaving you wishing Sega added a few extra settings or any exclusive content for the homebrew audience to prolong its playability. In conclusion, despite the trying difficulty, some blatant padding, and the lack of any real long-term value, Choplifter's classic, engaging gameplay still make it a solid addition to the Master System library, and a good choice for those looking for a quick action fix.